Hello,
Hi.
how are you?
Okay.
All right.
Ooh, Jeff, take your
I need
Coumadin.
a chair.
Okay. I love your hanging pot rack.
In you.
Great.
Jeff,
Oh, good.
take your
We need to
Coumadin.
grab something real quick.
Oh, they're great.
Underneath too. Oh, now this is too low.
The bar stool.
So let's see who else we have on. Hi, Virginia. Mike, if you want to turn your video and your microphone on, the bottom left-hand corner of your screen has a camera symbol and a microphone symbol. You click on that and we should be live and ready to roll.
Still two.
All right. So let's get this going like this. All right. So
Maybe
Happy-
a bar. That's right.
happy barbecue day.
Thank you.
So we gave you guys some pulled pork. We smoked this yesterday for about 12 hours in our smoker. We just rubbed it with our steak rub and then just let it go nice and slow at 250 degrees for 12 hours. Pulled it out and wrapped it and just let it rest for another hour and a half before we chilled it down and then pulled it. So you have some beautiful smoked pork. And the way you could tell is if you get in and look at it, you see a pinkish kind of border around the pork. That's your smoke ring. So that's all the smoke that's been grabbed by the meat. And that's where that smoke flavor comes from. Barbecue's a real love of mine. I love barbecue. I love making barbecue sauce. I love smoking meats. I love everything about barbecue. It's just, I don't know. It's just an American style of food that's fantastic. So first thing we're going to do is make a simple barbecue sauce. So now there are so many different variations of barbecue sauce. There's Texas barbecue, Carolina barbecue. There's the Tex-Mex style barbecue inspirations. So most of them have a tomato base. And so for our tomato base, we're using ketchup, which a lot of barbecue sauces use. And then for our sweetness, we're using brown sugar today. Some use molasses, some use honey, some use maple syrup. Kind of depends on what you want to do. For acid, we're using red wine vinegar, but you can use any kind of vinegar. So basically you can build this to be the flavors you want. And then our seasoning in here is paprika, mustard powder, salt, pepper, and malt vinegar as well. So, and then water, obviously, to thin it out so we can allow it to cook for time. Normally, barbecue sauces will cook for, you leave them on for 1-2 hours sometimes. This one, because the ketchup is already technically cooked, it's going to take us maybe 20 minutes to cook the whole thing. So first thing we're going to do is add all those ingredients into a pot and get it simmering. So I'm going to move my camera angle so you guys can see my pot and we can start cooking. All right. So you want to turn your pot on a medium-high heat. And the reason is we want to get this up to a simmer. And I normally like to start with my water because this way when I put the ketchup and the sugar in, I don't have to worry about it scorching at the bottom. Because brown sugar is heavy, ketchup's heavy. So if you start with the water, it kind of dilutes as it goes inside the pot. But we're going to add all this in and bring it up to a boil and then drop it down to a simmer. The vinegar is going to give it that tang. The paprika, salt, mustard powder, and black pepper. And I want this whole thing to liquefy, and then I'm going to cook it to the thickness or thinness I want. Now, depending on what kind of barbecue sauce you like, you can just reduce it down more, or if you want it thinner, you can thin it out. You can use apple juice instead of water. You can use beer if you want. And you just let this get as thick or thin as possible. Competition barbecue sauces are a little bit runnier because they like to take them and leave them in squeeze bottles so that you could just pour it right over the top or pour it on the side. They just have this really nice viscosity to it. Most barbecue sauces we see in stores are much thicker because they want to make it easy so that they can coat over the meat and hold on and grab. So there's just always all those differences. This is more of the open pit kind of variation of barbecue sauce, but it'll have a little sweetness like Sweet Baby Ray's does too. So I'm going to take this and bring it up to a boil. And then I'm going to drop it down to a simmer and just let it simmer. Now, again, if you want to make this spicy, add chipotle peppers to it. You want to, jazz it up with a different type of flavor, you can add applesauce to it. You can add anything you want to it's your barbecue sauce. This is just our basic run-of-the-mill simple sauce. So for our next step, for my next trick, we're going to get into the slaw. Now, whenever I do, there we go. When I was getting a little blurry for a second. Whenever I do barbecue sauce or barbecue things like pulled pork, I love them with a nice coleslaw. I think that barbecue sauce can be a little aggressive and heavy in flavor and texture. So I always like to put something raw with it. For this slaw, we're using Napa cabbage, gala apples, green onions, carrots. We give you these beautiful purple carrots, which if you've never had one, purple carrots have just all these different colors inside. They taste the same as a normal carrot, but they're just prettier for presentation. Malt vinegar, and then probably just a touch of salt. I'm assuming we're going to need just to bring out those flavors. So what we're looking to do is you can decide what kind of thickness you want on your coleslaw. Do you want it chopped? In which case you just dice it real fine. Me, I like Julienne because it kind of matches nicely with the texture of the pulled pork. I take it down just about to the core, but I don't include this core because it can get a little too firm and chewy. That part won't break down from the acid in the vinegar. So I have my cabbage. The next is the apple. And when I'm doing my apple, I'm not going to use the whole thing. I can, certainly. I just don't want it to be that sweet from the apple. But I'm going to cut slices like this. And then I'll lay them flat and julienne them for a matchstick kind of presentation. And that's going to kind of mix in nicely with the cabbage for the coleslaw. See? And now you have these beautiful little matchsticks that kind of just blend in with everything else. Now, for the carrots, there's a few different ways we can do this. I'm going to grab something to show you. I'm going to eat this piece. So, one of the things I love about purple carrots is they're absolutely gorgeous. Now, when I do salads, I use these a lot because when I start going in with a peeler and I get a little bit lower down, I have these amazing colors. So I want to incorporate some of those colors into the slaw. So personally, I'm going to use a peeler. And that's going to make them nice and thin. And then I'll stack them up and julienne these as well so that I still get that carrot pop. I get a little bit of crunch, but it's not too hard and crunchy because I also don't want to feel like I'm eating little sticks inside my coleslaw. The apples they're tender, you know? So I add that in. And then lastly, the green onions. I love green onions, so I like to do them like this so that I get kind of maximum amount of green onion into my slaw.
Huh. I thought of doing it.
Now the other thing I could do is say I was doing something bigger or serving the coleslaw on the side. I could take the green onion and slice it this way and have a much more dramatic presentation. But I feel like for the actual slaw itself, this works much better and just brings in a little more frequent onion pops while you're eating. So with any coleslaw now, as you can see, I have the cabbage, the carrots, the apples. It's got some beautiful colors here. I'm going to take the vinegar and add it in. And I'm going to hit this with a little bit of salt. And I don't want to add any sugar because my sauce has plenty of sugar already. So to add sugar kind of would just oversweeten the dish, and then you lose that smokiness from the pork. So what I want to do is just kind of take this, give it some gentle squeezes, nothing too firm, but I want to kind of break down the cabbage a touch and allow that acid and salt to get in there. And that's going to give you just a really wonderful coleslaw because it's going to pull some water out of the cabbage and out of the apples to mild out that vinegar flavor a little. So we'll take that and set it aside, and we can go back to, let me clean my board. when I was younger, my dad used to always tell me, a clean chef is a good chef. And then he'd leave the dishes for me, which was a ton of fun. So, okay. Coming back to our sauce. This is the speed I'm looking for it to boil at, that light simmer. Now, if I move my spatula along the base of the pot, now this is a high heat spatula, but you'll see it's pulling stuff up. That means that it's starting to stick at the bottom a little. That's okay because you're dealing with a lot of natural sugars here and they're gonna start to stick and caramelize. So we wanna move this sauce pretty often. And you can use a whisk, you can use a high heat spatula, you can use a wooden spoon. But if I were to take this sauce now and pull it off, you can see how it's kind of runny. But once this cools, it's gonna be pretty thick because of the sugars. So I would just let this, based on the flavor I want, continue to cook to see where it kind of comes out at. But it's absolutely delicious. So I can leave it like this, or I can let it cook a little more and just richen up those flavors a little. I think I'm gonna let this cook just a touch more. Grab a pan. So I'm actually going to move this to the main stove to finish simmering so that I can use this for the next step.
It's a portable with propane.
Yeah, this is the little guy that, the problem is when I do anything on the main stove, like the stove here, it's so powerful that it throws off everyone cooking at home because it's happening twice as fast as what you guys could do at home. So I switched to this butane burner. And it's a little more like part of what you're using right now. So that kind of helps us all stay on the same page.
I'd like to get one of those.
They're great. They're only like $20, $25. They're not expensive. You can find them on Amazon, which is normally the best spot because if you go to a boutique store, you're going to pay $45, $50 for it. But just these simple ones, $20, $25, they're easy to use. And what's that?
We have electric.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, electric's great. We have the induction ones too.
I wish.
Hey, Chef, we have a question from Facebook.
Yes, ma'am.
What seasoning went into the coleslaw?
Just vinegar and salt. And we're going to let the natural flavors of the carrots and apples and the green onion kind of come through. So it's bright and light because there's a lot of seasoning in the sauce and there's a good amount of seasoning on the pork as well. So tonight's dish is pulled pork sliders. So we gave you these beautiful brioche buns. They're absolutely wonderful. Now, you can just take them just like this if you want. I always like to toast my buns a little bit. Come on, you guys have to tell me nice buns.
Oh.
So I like to toast my buns a little bit. It just kind of softens them a little. I don't want them to be mushy or anything, but all I'm doing is just putting them in a pan. Sometimes I'll add a little bit of butter to it, depending on if the bread's a little more hard, but brioche has so much butter in it as it is, as a dough. I don't normally add it to this. There we go. Okay. Thought I just caught my stomach on fire. So I just want to warm these through a little. And the whole point, again, is just to soften them a little, bring out some of that sweetness, bring out some of those natural butters. And now this can be done on a grill. It can be done in a pan. I wouldn't do it in a microwave because if you microwave bread, if you've ever microwaved bread, it's going to get very stale. So just a nice dry toast will do exactly what you need. And you'll see with brioche, it'll start to pick up color without any assistance. And that's because there is so much butter in a brioche dough. The other thing I like to do is I like to do both sides because the bottom could get soft and nice, but the top, if you heat the top up, it becomes absolutely delicious. It gets a little bit of a char, it gets super soft and just really wonderful to eat.
Both sides at once.
Right. You can see you're starting to get some color there too. Now, for our next trick, I'm going to take the brioche buns and put them down. And then I'm going to realize that I didn't grab the tongs that I instructed all of you to get. So let me grab some.
I know. We should be watching every night.
Sorry about that. I should have been better prepared. Okay, so my buns are looking gorgeous. See that kind of chart, it's that steakhouse look. We want that. We want that for our buns. They have a beautiful warm, they're warm all the way through. So now I'm going to take the pork and I want to heat it up just a little bit. And I'm not looking to cook the pork because it's already smoked to a beautiful point where it's moist, it's tender, it's succulent. So I don't want to dry it out, but I do want to put some heat through it. And then what I'm going to do, I can do one of two things. I can either enrobe this in the sauce, which we're going to do today, or I could put this heated up right on the bread and then just put the sauce on top, which a lot of barbecue places do both. There's a lot of barbecue spots that will lightly toss the pulled pork in sauce to just kind of do the final seasoning. And then they'll put a little bit extra to garnish. We're going to put enough on here to completely coat it, so we won't need to put more on later. But you know, pulled pork is just one of those great things where you could take it, you can use it for nachos, tacos, you can use it for, you know, breakfast dishes and omelets and skillets and hash. And if you have a smoker or you smoke meat, it's just wonderful. Oh, and my burner went out. There we go. So I'm a big pulled pork fan, especially when it's done right. I was in Carolinas and I saw them doing whole hog smoking, and it was the most incredible thing I've ever seen. I became addicted to pulled pork. All right, so as it's heating through, and again, you can see all these beautiful smoke rings marks on there. We don't want to heat it too much, but it makes your whole house start to smell like pulled pork. I'm going to add a little bit of this barbecue sauce that we made, and I'm going to turn the heat off. The reason I'm going to turn the heat off is I don't want too much reduction on the sauce because we've already cooked it to where it is. So I just turn it off and give this a stir, and you can see that glaze forming on the pulled pork. You shouldn't need any additional salt or any kind of seasoning or acid or anything to this because the sauce is reducing, the pork is seasoned, and the sauce is properly seasoned. Now to build, we're going to take our burner and say goodbye. Here I have our buns. Pulled pork. And you can put as much or as little on as you want. I love big, giant, you know, pulled pork sliders they're fantastic. And you guys will see these at the club once we can actually start getting back together again. We're going to be rolling out a whole bunch of new smoked meats and stuff because, you know, I love it. I love it so much. The coleslaw has now kind of come together and it's soft, and you can see as I toss it, it's got a nice moisture content to it, but it's not super wet like a mayonnaise-based coleslaw. This is going to add just a lot of freshness to the dish. So I put that on top of each one. And you want to make sure, because these are smaller sandwiches, that each one has a little bit of apple, a little carrot, a little green onion. Then we top with our other bun. And you have yourself a beautiful set of pulled pork sliders. Except that one. There we go. Look at that. Now, are there any questions?
It really looks pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Have you ever made barbecue sauce before?
Yeah.
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 Good.
Now, a lot of containers. I mean, some had dried mustard in it and stuff like that.
Yeah. There's so many different variations. You know, the best one I had was actually in Texas, in Taylor, Texas. This guy put together a honey jalapeno barbecue sauce that was just the most amazing thing I've ever eaten. And he served it with his ribs and his pulled pork. And I could have drank the sauce. And it wasn't like, it was cool because it wasn't spicy jalapeno. It was like, it had a raw jalapeno flavor to it, which was really interesting.
I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
the hamburger buns that you have for pickup, are they brioche?
They are brioche.
Oh, darn, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yep, they're brioche, and then we keep them frozen so that we can make sure you have as fresh as possible. Because right now we're not getting deliveries the same way we could in the past. So in order to do that, we freeze the bread.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
I wish I ordered
Then
them
we'll
now.
have another opportunity.
Yeah, you can get them for Monday.
Okay,
Yeah, absolutely. They're not going anywhere. We'll make sure we have them.
and
So,
my
all right. Well, thank you so much. If there's not any other questions, you guys go ahead and be pit masters and make your pulled pork sliders.
Okay.
All right. Take care. Have a wonderful night.
You too. Thanks a lot.
Bye. Be safe.
Bye.
Bye-bye.